Well, Parliament passed the Criminal Law Forensic Procedures Amendment Bill, otherwise known as the DNA Bill, yesterday. It allows investigators to take and store DNA samples from criminals or suspected criminals for use during investigations. The bill will now be submitted to the National Assembly. Joining us now is the founder and executive director of the DNA Project, Vanessa Lynch, and she joins us from Cape Town. Ms. Lynch, afternoon to you, and thank you for joining us. So what impact is this piece of legislation going to have on the fight against crime?
Well, I think the amazing thing about it is that it enables us to identify serial offenders, at least at a very early stage of their criminal career. And this is because it will be compulsory for all arrestees and convicted offenders to have their DNA profiles entered onto a database. And these will be comparatively searched against all DNA profiles collected from crime scenes. And if we think about the contact crime that we have in this country and the violent crime, there is a huge amount of biological evidence being left behind. So with a very high reoffending rate in this country, we will be able to utilize this incredible technology to identify these serial offenders at a much earlier stage of their criminal career, taking them off the streets and preventing them from continuing their crimes.
This doesn't seem like a terribly difficult or complicated thing to do. Why didn't we have it before?
There was simply a lack of legislation. Although we do have a forensic science laboratory and we do have a forensic science process where we are looking at DNA profiles in certain cases, we're only doing it on a case-by-case basis. What this legislation will allow us to do is use it for criminal intelligence. So even where we don't have a suspect, we can still link cases together by virtue of the same profile being present at different crime scenes. For instance, a serial rapist. And if you arrest somebody on an unrelated offence, you can obviously identify them for all of those offences. I don't know why it's taken so long, and certainly through a lot of campaigning, through the support of the Change Your Life Trust, for instance, who have motivated our fight for this, we finally have a framework within which we can collect DNA profiles and utilise it for this purpose, which is a great thing to move forward on.
Now, addressing Parliament yesterday, the police said it would take them 511 days to have this up and running. Are you happy with that particular time frame?
The Forensic Science Laboratory is already up and running. The framework that they've given is actually relatively small considering what this legislation has to do. For instance, all of the convicted offenders now have to be profiled, all of the arrestees, all of the police officers who are going to be taking the DNA samples, which is a simple cheek swab, have got to be trained by medical practitioners and registered nurses to take these samples from arrestees and convicted offenders. So the implementation of this bill will probably take, in order for its success to be realized, at the very least 5 years, and a National Forensic Oversight Board will also be established to ensure that this legislation is in fact implemented and we do start seeing results. It's not an overnight process, but it certainly creates a fantastic framework upon which we can gather intelligence data. So it's not going to be 500 and however many days you mentioned until it starts being utilized. It's going to take that amount of time until the full effect of all of these processes are going to be taking place.
Why was this so important for you personally? You've lobbied very hard around this.
Indeed. My father was murdered 9 years ago, and it was at that stage, through the loss of DNA evidence at the crime scene, which is a huge challenge in itself in this country, forensic awareness and the preservation of biological evidence at crime scenes, as well as the fact that we didn't have a regulatory framework where we were entering these DNA profiles collected from crime scenes onto a database in order to identify the perpetrators. That made me realize that something needed to be done in this country to formalize that. And this is incredible technology. It's not the silver bullet. You still need a good criminal justice system. You need good investigative work. But if you can use and maximize this incredible technology, which is incredibly scientific and objective, it either is your DNA or it's not, then in a country where we are screaming out for tangible solutions to resolve crime and identify our perpetrators and take them off the street, I really sought to achieve this in this country, and that's why I've been campaigning so hard for things like this legislation and forensic awareness, which is a continuing challenge, as well as a skills analysis and an upping of skills in this particular arena.
Well, thank you for your time, Vanessa. She is the founder and executive director of the DNA Project, joining us from Cape.